No, it's okay. Well, I guess the first and most obvious question, how are you finding Comic-Con, and what is the appeal of events like this for you?
Well, the Comic-Con so far has been amazing. Everybody's super nice. It's a little, depending on the location they come from, it's a little difficult to understand sometimes what people are saying, you know. But I love London, and I've been here many, many times, and it's always nice to come back to the city. And the benefit of events like this is, you know, everybody gets to share their love of whatever it is that really moves them. So whether it's video games or anime or movies, it's you know, it's just a nice way to celebrate the things that people really dig.
When people do get to meet you and they get to chat to you about the things that they dig that you've done, what are the most common questions? What do people usually fire at you?
Oh, they ask me, well, they want to hear me do the Solid Snake voice, which I do all day. And they ask me what my favorite game was, which is typically Snake Eater. And they ask me, well, you know, I'm a screenwriter as well, so people ask me how to get into that business and how to become a voice actor, and, you know, things like that.
There's one question I want to ask you, and it's one that a lot of people don't touch on, and it's from your previous career before you became famous from doing the voice of Solid Snake, so to speak. The Guyver, like the fact that a lot of people have seen it and don't actually place you as the lead in that, you know, unless it's someone who's basically like understands it, knows the law and everything. What was your experience for that? Because you worked with Mark Hamill as well.
I didn't actually. I've been lucky enough to meet Mark Hamill as a voice actor, but no, he was in the first Guyver.
Yeah.
But he was, unfortunately, he was turned into a giant insect creature, and then he died.
Slug sort of thing.
Yeah. Something. He had a rough fate. So I was in Guyver Dark Hero, which was the sequel. So I didn't get to work with Mark, but that movie was, I mean, it was a blast to work on. I got, you know, it was my first movie that I worked on, and I was the lead, and it was like being Batman or something, and we spent the summer shooting up in the Angeles Crest Mountains outside of Los Angeles, and I met my wife on that movie, and it was life-changing. It was amazing.
Did you do any like research into the character when they presented it to you? Because I know it was like a big thing at one point. Because
I did. I went to space. No, I didn't go to space. That's not true. But I did. I got the anime, the videotapes of the anime, and I really studied that and tried to figure out what the world was and how it worked, because it's unusual. But yeah, no, I dug into it.
Do you think if it was released at a different time that it would have been a lot bigger? Because at the time, I think it was like superhero movies when they were doing okay, but they weren't sort of known as the big genre that it is now.
Of course.
And especially with something like anime as well, people didn't really understand it as well as they do now, because you've got like conventions and everything that's based around it. Sure. Do you feel like if it was redone now that people would really sink their teeth into it? Because it was really an underrated film.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, obviously, you know, nerd culture has expanded hugely, and appreciation of anime and superhero films, all of those things have come a long way. But Guyver was a small movie, and you know, our budget was, I think, $800,000 or something. So, you know, it's tough to make a movie like that break hugely because you don't have a marketing budget to inform the world about it. It was always going to be a cult film, and I'm sort of proud of it from that perspective. It's if people like it, it's because they found it and they dig it. So, you know, I've spoken to Steve Wang, the director, about possibly doing another one and being an older Guyver, and I would really love to do that because it's picked up a nice fan base. In fact, when we were doing the movie X-Men, I was working on the script, and the stunt coordinator, Gary Jensen, walked past my office, and he had, shall I hold for the plane?
Oh, it should be fine.
Okay. So the stunt coordinator, Gary Jensen, walked past my office, and he was carrying a copy of Guyver, and I was like, hang on, where are you going with that? And he goes, oh, I'm going to show this to Brian. He goes, have you ever seen this movie? The fights are amazing.
Yeah, it was a really good movie.
Yeah, and I said, well, turn it over. And he turned it over, and he goes, but that's you. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, why is that you? And it was a baffling little moment on the set of X-Men.
It's a beautiful thing as well, and especially because, and as you said, doing something with an older character of the same type of genre with the same kind of universe would be interesting, especially from a character perspective, because
Yeah.
you get to find out what he was doing before that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Just fighting crime or zoonoids or
Kind of
something.
like that aging hero, so to speak. So you
That's
get to
right.
find
That's-
out
that's
what's
how I
been
view
going down
myself.
in life. No, well, to most you probably are.
Yeah, Guyver 3, aging hero. Sounds pretty good, right? That's a good tag.
Sold.
Well, thank you.
Sold.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool.
Obviously, talking about another character which is, I think, even more iconic for fans that you've had a chance to play. I mean, of all the great characters that video games have given us, why do you think Snake, why do you think that character is one of the absolute icons of the industry for people who even aren't hardcore gamers? That's one of the characters they know and one of the ones they're most affectionate for.
Sure. Well, I mean, a large part of that is because the games are so amazing, right? And every single one was so technologically groundbreaking. You know, Hideo Kojima's real-world research that he put into, you know, where the military was going, like everything that they talked about in terms of nanomachines and genome manipulation and armies for hire, all of that stuff was true and came true after the games, you know, anticipated that that's where they were going. So when you play them, you know, Snake is an amazing character, and I think I do a pretty good job at it, but to be in that world and to be a part of a game that's so incredibly beautifully executed gives you quite a bit of, you know, it's nice to have that world behind you, and it really, you know, they were just, they really created the notion of cinematic gameplay. So that was, I think that's what it is. Sorry.
How do you feel? I mean, over the course of the last couple of years, there's been a couple of obstacles for the Metal Gear Solid franchise.
Sure.
How
Well, that's the nature of entertainment,
yeah,
you know.
How do you feel about that? What's your personal take on the situation right now with Metal Gear Solid?
Well, I'm not sure which situation you're referring to. I mean,
well, for example, the you know,
there's been a lot of
Hideo
situations.
Kojima just like, you know, being denied accepting an award, for example, I think last year.
Oh yeah, well, look, I mean, I wasn't involved in those things. It's hard for me to comment. I can say that having been involved in a number of franchises that are extremely expensive and extremely well known, things get complicated along the way, and you know, people develop conflicts, and I don't really know what the situation was there. But it's, you know, my personal feeling is it's a shame. It should really just be about the games. It should really just be about the experience. And unfortunately, in matters of commerce and marketing and execution, it gets sticky. You know, and it seems to happen. You know, it happened with the X-Men movies. It happens. Any big thing that you're working on goes through permutations, and when there's money involved, it can lead to problems.
What do you find so polarizing about Snake Eater? As you said, it was one of your favorites. What was the appeal in terms of making that stand out from the other Metal Gear Solid games to become like your uttermost favorite project?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I think partially it's because the retro feel of it. You know, all the Metal Gear games are so ultra modern and on the cutting edge of technology, and then suddenly you're in this retro world and it's the same sort of character and dealing with similar issues, but you know, it altered the gameplay, it altered the weapons that you used, the equipment that you used, and it really delved into a different era of history. So, and plus it was so beautiful, like just that jungle setting, the sequence where you had to take on the end, the big sniper fight, and it was just the two massive maps of jungle that you had to go through. It's just a different sort of experience. And then forgive me for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, but the character of Snake in that one is Big Boss before he becomes Big Boss. And so while Solid Snake was always kind of beat down and he was already tired of being a legend by the time the first game started, Big Boss was he was young and he was enthusiastic and he still believed in things and he hadn't had the heart beat out of him yet. And so there's a little more drive, there's a little more joy there to play the character, and I think that also maybe inspired people a little bit more.
In terms of your very diverse career as well,
you can say strange.
What's given you kind of the long-lasting ability to keep doing it? As you said, you're very diverse in terms of screenwriting, voice acting. There must be a key element that keeps you going from strength to strength.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. The key element is love. I love what I do, and I love, I am one of these people, one of these Comicon people, and I always have been. I've always loved comic books. I've always loved superhero stories, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, all of those things. And to be able to, like when I play Snake, for example, I believe that I'm Snake, and I believe that I'm going into those things. And when I get to write an X-Men movie or Watchmen or something, I'm able to take all of that love that I and all of the things that I learned and was inspired by those properties, and express those to a new audience. And it just lights me on fire. I just love it. So that's. There is no better. So it's really just enthusiasm and personal fire.
Is it a bit daunting going in and writing for franchises like that you've loved for so long?
Yeah, it's daunting. X-Men was my first writing job, so it was daunting in that I was writing an $80 million film, and the studio would have preferred that I died, So it was not only daunting, it was physically threatening, and it was just madness. People don't appreciate that when you work on something. Watchmen was, $150 million film. When you're spending that much of somebody else's money, they get tense, and it can be a lot of pressure. So, but people ask me about. They're like, do you worry about the fans when you're writing Watchmen or whatever, or pleasing them? And the bottom line is, I don't. I worry about, do I love it as a fan? If I feel like it feels like the comic book, if I feel like it's translated into the world, I hope other people will go along with it. But I don't really worry about, you can't please everybody. Have you ever anybody been on the internet? It's a divided place.
Could you tell us a bit more in detail about how you got to the X-Men position? That must have been something really.
Yeah, I've told this story a number of times, but it changed my whole life. In 1997, I produced and starred in a little movie called Burn. My friend Brian Singer, who had directed The Usual Suspects, was the producer of that movie, and so he knew me as a filmmaker. But our deal for that movie fell through, and then I was a broke film producer, and Brian was kind enough to give me a job answering the phones on the movie X-Men. And then I was driving him around to various creature effects meetings, and he was like, "Oh, the script is terrible, it's going to ruin my life," or whatever, and I knew the comic book very well, so I had made this little movie with him, so I said, well, why don't you have a scene where Wolverine runs into Cyclops, and he says this, and they say that, and I described a little scene. I said, and that'll sort of set up what you want to do. And he goes, "Good, yeah, go write that for me." And I figured he was kidding because it was an $80 million movie. And then the next day he said, "Where's my scene?" I was like, "Oh, I'm working on it." And so I wrote this scene, and he put it in the movie, and then he started having me rewrite the script. So we would work all day, and then everyone would go home, and I'd stay in the office till 1 or 2 in the morning writing the script. And the studio didn't know, and when they found out, they were not thrilled, but they were forced to make a deal with me because I'd already written half the script at that point. So they made a deal for the guild minimum amount, and then I went up to Canada. I worked on the movie for 13 months, and I ended up getting sole credit, and then changed my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like getting hit by lightning, but better. You know.
And on that note, I think we have to let you get back to stuff. But
Okay.
thanks for the chat.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.